I hope and wish everyone and their family members and their colleagues are safe during this pandemic. During this pandemic, our manufacturing units, R&D center, and corporate office are functioning normally during this quarter. At Laurus, we are committed to protecting the health of our employees and their families. We continue to implement rigorous safety and hygiene measures across all functions without any complacency. I'm very thankful to all our colleagues for rising to this challenge and ensuring business continuity successfully. Our Q3 revenues stood at 1,288 crores, showcasing a robust growth of 76% year-on-year for the quarter and 71% for 9 months of FY21 year-on-year. We are also glad to mention that our revenue growth was driven by robust demand for several key products and not driven by COVID-19 related stocking. EBITDA margin was robust at 34% despite the withdrawal of export incentives by the government and high logistics costs during this crisis. To begin with, I would like to share the key updates on our growing formulation business. The formulation division achieved 430 crore sales in the quarter, showcasing a growth of almost 50% year-on-year. During the 9 months of FY21, this division achieved a sale of 1,234 crores. The revenue contribution from formulation segment is about 36% for 9 months, as against 28% in FY20. During the quarter, we got approval for a triple combination product containing tenofovir alafenamide, and we are in the process of obtaining in-country approvals, and we expect to launch this product in the first half of next financial year. Apart from the LMIC business, we have also seen growth in developed markets of North America and EU. To leverage our marketing front end in the US business, we commenced the marketing of in-licensed products developed and manufactured by our business partners. Out of 5 in-licensed products, 2 are launched, and we will launch the remaining 3 products during the Q1 FY22. We had a total of 9 final approvals and 9 tentative approvals out of 26 ANDAs filed so far. In Canada, we have 6 product approvals, of which 4 were launched, and we intend to launch the remaining 2 very soon. As far as the EU business is concerned, we have validated an additional 2 products as part of our contract manufacturing partnership. We expect a significant upside from these products from FY23 onwards. We also obtained approvals for 5 products in the EU region, of which we have launched 2 products, and we will be launching the others very shortly. We continue to invest in our FDF infrastructure. Our debottlenecking exercise of existing capacities is on course, and this capacity will be available for commercial manufacturing by end of the Q4, although with a delay of a few months. Our brownfield expansion project in FDF on the same site with similar capacities will be operational in a phased manner from August 2021 and will be fully operational by end of FY22. On the R&D front, we continue to invest in our FDF business. Overall R&D expenditure across all divisions as a percentage of revenue stood at 4% for the 9 months of FY21. So far, we have filed 26 ANDAs in US, 9 dossiers in Europe, 12 in Canada, 8 with WHO, 2 dossiers in South Africa and 2 in India, while we have filed several products across the rest of the world. Out of the 26 ANDAs filed in US, we believe 2 are P4s and 7 are first to file and P4s. And we would like to reiterate that our approach remains product specific rather than market specific. When coming to our generic API business, our antiviral API business recorded a very healthy growth of more than 160% for the quarter over quarter 3 FY20 with 568 crore sales. And in the first 9 months of this financial year, we almost surpassed the total ARV sales of the entire financial year 20. The growth led by higher volumes of all key first-line APIs. Second-line ARV APIs continue to see healthy sales in Q3 FY21. Due to the demand increases from third-party API sales, we are expanding capacities for key APIs in the coming 12 months' time. We expect to maintain sales at this level in the coming quarters. When it comes to oncology APIs, the segment recorded a growth of 36% quarter over quarter. Onco sales declined by 25% from Q2 to Q3 due to higher uptake of few APIs based on approvals by few customers. I would also like to mention that we have one of the largest high-potent API capacities in the country and have plans to expand high-potent API manufacturing capabilities in Unit 4 as well. We expect reasonable growth in onco business in the coming quarters as well. In the other APIs, our sales remained flat from Q3 FY20 to Q3 FY21. But for 9 months, we achieved a sales growth of over 45%. The sluggishness in the segment in Q3 was due to changes in delivery schedules from some customers. We have initiated discussions with one of our key generic partners for contract manufacturing opportunities of several APIs, and we expect to build a dedicated block to accommodate these generic API contract manufacturing. We are also creating a lot of capacity for non-ARV APIs. When it comes to synthesis business, we recorded a growth of 60% from Q3 FY20 to Q3 FY21. In the 9 months, we have achieved 343 crore sales. As you are aware, we have incorporated another step-down wholly owned subsidiary, Laurus Ingredients Private Limited, during the Q3 FY21. As we are expanding the manufacturing infrastructure for this division, this new subsidiary will focus on few core areas under consideration. Construction activity initiated at the proposed dedicated synthesis R&D at Genome Valley, close to our current R&D center. A new manufacturing site for this division will also be a greenfield project at Vizag, which will cater to the manufacturing needs of the division for the next 4 to 5 years. We are in the process of acquiring land for this division, and this site will have capabilities to handle steroids and hormones, high-potent molecules, apart from large volume commercial products. We are also happy to share that we acquired majority equity in Richcore, and the company will be renamed as Laurus Bio. Laurus Bio is on course to commission large-scale fermentation capability during the quarter for FY21, and we are confident of achieving growth as outlined earlier during the acquisition. We are also acquiring additional land for further expanding manufacturing capacities and capabilities for Laurus Bio. With that, I would like to hand it over to Ravi to share financial highlights.
Thank you, Dr. Satya, and very warm welcome everyone on our Quarter 3 and 9 months FY21 earning call. Total income from operation for the quarter 1288 crores against 730 crores, showing an 76% year-on-year growth. 3,400 crore against 1993 crores for 9 months with a growth of 71%. With a better product mix, gross margin improved from 51% to 55% on an quarter-on-quarter basis. Our EBITDA is 34%. Diluted EPS per quarter is at 5.1, not an annualized basis. More than 250% growth over quarter 3 FY20. Diluted EPS for 9 months is 12.8 rupees, not annualized. Our ROCE improved to 40% on an annualized basis due to operational leverage. On the capex front, we invested around 433 crores during 9 months of current fiscal. We have incorporated fully owned step-down subsidiary for our Laurus Synthesis Private Limited, named Laurus Ingredients, to take care of certain special projects in CDMO business. To strengthen our position as a cost-effective integrated player, we are invested in backward integration and for one of our ARV product, and which was operational in January 21. We acquired a land for FDF site in Hyderabad. We are in the process of acquiring an additional site for our API and synthesis divisions. Based on the performance of the company, the board of directors declared a dividend of rupees 40 paisa per share of rupees 2 face value, that is around 20%. With this, I would request the moderator to open lines for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Tarang from Old Bridge Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good morning and very heartiest congratulations for such strong results. I mean, this is the third quarter in a row we're seeing this performance. 3 questions from my side. One, sir, as we, just wanted to get your bits on how's the TLE to the TLD transition happening in the ARV markets, and how are you hedging your business against this transition? That's one. The second is, we look at your ARV business revenues, the API business, and even in Q2 we saw a significant gain in market share, and we see a significant gain in Q3 as well. The sense that we got in Q2 was because of you being a tier 1 supplier, you were just customers preferred you over the others. So is that the same reason which is driving your market share gain, or there's something more to it? And the third, if you could give us a sense on the geographical split of your 9-month FY21 FDF revenue between LMIC and non-LMIC.
Thank you. The shift in therapy from efavirenz to dolutegravir, we did very well, in fact, to our benefit. While we continue to increase, not only increase our market share in efavirenz and its intermediates, we continue to sell significant volumes of dolutegravir as part of third-party APIs. And also, majority of our formulation sales are coming from TLD, and some sales are coming from TLE. As you are aware, there are only 3 approvals for TLE, whereas there are 9 approvals for TLD. So we continue to have advantage in TLE while we capture more market share, and we continue to retain the market share what we have achieved in TLD. And when it comes to the revenue split from LMIC versus North America and EU, as we explained earlier, the split is 3/4 and 1/4. About 1/4 of revenue came from advanced markets and 3/4 came from LMIC.
Okay. And the question on ARV APIs?
ARV APIs, we are adding more capacities to meet our demand. Surprisingly, our order book for ARV APIs was much bigger than at the beginning of Q2 to beginning of Q4. So we see a lot of uptick in the demand for APIs. That could be because of our scale, because of our quality, compliance and sustainability. We are getting a lot of traction and high demand for our key first line APIs. So we expect to, if you look at our Q3, we have done our 568 crore ARV API sale. We are confident to maintain that in the coming quarters.
Okay. Thank you, sir, and all the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sudarshan Padmanabhan from Sundaram Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for taking my questions and congrats on great set of numbers. Sir, my question is to understand the correlation between mix and gross margin. I mean, despite of MEIS and despite of, if you look at it on a Q-on-Q basis, ARVs being higher this quarter, our gross margins have kind of improved. I mean, does that mean the frontline combination in terms of ARVs is coming with higher margin? I'm just unable to kind of reconcile this, mix versus gross margin, sir.
Our gross margin was little less in Q3 because of withdrawal of export incentives and also higher logistics cost due to the COVID crisis. But we are confident that we will be able to maintain the gross margin levels. That also clearly indicates the quality of revenue we are achieving. We are not compromising on the quality of business for growth in top line. And also, our operational leverage by increasing asset utilization is clearly visible by showcasing a consistent increase in our EBITDA margins as well.
So specifically in this quarter, which is the business that has contributed to the top line, I mean margins, sir? Because I would assume that formulations and synthesis would be higher margins as compared to APIs. But I think in this quarter we have higher APIs versus formulations and synthesis. So that is why I'm trying to understand.
We also had some high gross margin APIs. We supplied significant volumes of APIs, including ARV APIs, for launch in Europe and US. So that also contributed to higher margins in API division.
And we have enough contracts and visibility in terms of volume offtake that as you mentioned that this 560, 570 crores will sustain at least in the next 2 to 3 quarters for the time being.
We do hope so. Yeah.
So one final question is on the finished dosage side. I think with the triple combination for us almost coming through. I mean, do we have the capacities in place to kind of capitalize on the kind of launch and take up the market share?
Currently, we are using our capacities at the optimum level, and our debottlenecking exercise will also be finished during Q4. And the new capacities will be available from August onwards. So we are getting up to meet higher demands. See, as I mentioned, we are looking at healthy top line, not just top line. So we are cautious to get market share while we maintain our third-party API sales. See, if you look at our ARV, we have done more API sale to third parties in ARVs rather than our formulation division. So we would like to maintain that strategy, not to cannibalize our business by going aggressively into formulations as well.
Sure, so thanks a lot. I'll join back with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nitesh Rathod from Nippon India Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi sir. Good morning. Can you help us understand efavirenz versus dolutegravir? Is one either of the product a high volume, low value versus or low volume, high value kind of API?
Efavirenz and its intermediates, we continue to have a leadership position where we are making about 700-800 tons of efavirenz or its intermediate in a year. Whereas dolutegravir, if you look at efavirenz is a 600 milligrams dose or 400 milligrams versus 50 milligrams of dolutegravir. So the dosage is significantly low, but pricing is high. If you look at the franchisee of efavirenz plus dolutegravir in FY20 and FY21, we have done more sales in the franchisee than the last year.
Okay. So you said 400, 600 grams versus 40 milligram. So on a optimum at a market level, the API consumption comes down very dramatically on a tonnage term. Tonnage.
Yes.
And sir, in the API market for ARV, even though there would be many players who would have got approval from the global tender in the global fund, how many players are active in terms of supplying APIs?
I think there are not many APIs which are pre-qualified by WHO, but when it comes to formulations, there are about 8 approvals right now for dolutegravir-based combinations. And we believe we have reasonable market share in the formulations and largest market share in the APIs in dolutegravir.
So is there, like in case of formulations, assuming WHO has approved 8 players, are all 8 to 10 players active in the market, or there are players who have withdrawn and they may come in coming years or so?
No one withdrawn from the market, but the market share varies significantly from player to player. Let's say there's 8-player market doesn't mean it is 12.5% everyone enjoys. We are probably number 3 in the market share. I will not give you the percentage wise. We are number 3 when it comes to the overall market share in the formulation. Yeah.
And in the API, you would be number 1.
Yes. Yeah.
So given you said it's a low volume API, is there any risk of competition coming in given the strong profit or strong revenues we are making in ARV API in 2-3 years on a medium term basis?
See, if you evaluate the history, in the last 5 years, there is no new API player came into ARVs. And if competition comes, we will face it. So we are not worried about competition. Yeah. So we have largest capacities installed, and we have one of the cost-effective process. And we have regulatory approvals in place by WHO, by FDA. So we believe we will maintain our leadership position. Yeah.
Sir, one last question. In last time you mentioned on the ground level, the dispensing for the ARV was increased from 1 month to 3 months because of the COVID pandemic. Is that a change or is that status quo? Anything over there? Now things have stabilized in most of the geographies?
The orders for ARVs are in the multi-month dispensing only. So, same question was asked by someone, is there any stocking happened because of that sales increased in Q1? Assuming Q1 stocking, Q2 stocking, Q3 stocking, so people will not stock for years. So, people moved from 1 month dispensing to 3 month dispensing, and majority of our formulations, not only us, most of the people are supplying in multi-month dispensing packs. So that became a quite normal nowadays for most of the ARV products.
So we don't see any risk of that reversing in next 6 months, is what my question was.
Even in reverse, the people will buy 3 packets instead of 1 packet.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sandeep from East Lane Capital. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Dr. Satya, Ravi. 3 questions. First question is, if you could give a bit of a perspective on the HIV market. You would reach a turnover of about $350 million in HIV API plus formulation approximately. How big is the opportunity you see over the medium term? Can you double this over 3 to 4, 5 years? The largest player is $1 billion player. So what is the potential for HIV market for Laurus with its lowest cost production, large capacities?
I think doubling is impossible. The reason is the number of patients who are eligible for the treatment is not increasing significantly. So there are more number of people being added into the treatment. That is 6-7% of patient additions we are seeing based on the data. So the growth could be 5-6% in offtake. We do believe that increase will be offset by price decline over a period of time. So our growth in ARV APIs will primarily come from demand moving from weak players to strong players.
Understood. And as the HIV market saturates for Laurus, which are the other therapies where you could have a similar dominant position over the next 3 to 5 years? Will it be diabetes? Does it offer that kind of an opportunity, or which therapies could offer, or it's going to be a combination of a lot of therapies?
There are 2 therapies which we have a very strong focus and also building pipeline. The one is diabetes. The second one is cardiovascular. And we have a very good basket of products in diabetes right now, and we are building our strong basket in cardiovascular products as well. So these 2 will drive our growth in the coming years. See, if you look at the evolution from 80% to ARV APIs, in the 5 years we moved to 38% of ARV API. Similarly, our revenue dependency on ARV formulations currently is very high. But in the next 5 years, we will also diversify our revenues coming from non-ARV formulations significantly, and the dependence on ARV will come down significantly. So, because there are no new formulations to be developed in ARVs, we are almost done with most of the developments. So, a development focus is shifting from ARV to non-ARV, and also we are adding very large capacity in Vizag, and we have taken land for formulation expansion in Hyderabad as well. So, if you want to look at where we will be in, say, 3-4 years down the line, I'm sure we'll be discussing on non-ARV in 5 years from now. Yeah. See, if you look at the calls 1 year, 1.5 years back, half of the time people were asking questions on efavirenz. Now nobody asks questions on efavirenz. 2 years from now, people will not ask questions on ARV APIs. And maybe another 2 years from then, people will not ask about ARV formulations. People may talk about what we are doing in our Laurus Bio, what growth we have in Laurus Bio, what other therapy areas we will be focusing, what kind of delivery dosage forms we are doing. So, company is in the transformation phase. So, we need time, and we are very confident to expand our portfolio beyond just ARV.
The next question was on Laurus Bio. I know it's just been a month and a half since the acquisition has been done. Just 3 to 5 years, how do you see it? Lot is happening, whether it is therapies, whether it is food, nutraceuticals. What's your vision? How should we think about Laurus Bio over 3 to 5 years?
The Laurus Bio will be a CDMO for recombinant proteins, whether it could be food or for therapeutics. Currently, the expansion going on at Laurus Bio is to meet customer demand for recombinant protein-based foods. And we are looking at acquiring land, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, to expand that recombinant protein manufacturing capabilities, not only for food, but also for therapeutics. We are also identifying a lot of areas where the synergies could be built between our chemistry and fermentation capabilities of bio. So the synergies are also looking very attractive. So a lot will happen, and we will give you more details as and when we expand into new areas. And that is very exciting for us. Yeah.
And last question, if I may, is on the synthesis business, the 4th pillar for Laurus. In the new emerging scenario where small molecules are sort of not that many may come out of the pipeline, of the big pharma pipeline, how do you see the synthesis business? What is the opportunity you see over the next, medium to long term?
In our CDMO business, we have evolved very significantly in the last decade. In 2010, we need to explain about company first to 15 minutes in the meeting. Now we don't need to explain our capabilities, and we need not explain about our scale. We need not explain our sustainability. So we are recognized as a strong player in CDMO for high-potent molecules and in very large volume molecules. So people look at us on the two extremes. Like in our API also, we are doing high-potent oncology molecules and we are doing very large volume diabetic and ARV molecules. Our CDMO efforts are also culminating in the same trend. People are looking at us for high-potent molecules, which we have several molecules in pipeline. And we're also doing several tens of tons of opportunity commercial molecules. So although the number of small molecules in the development by Big Pharma is constant, I don't want to say going down, constant, and we have great opportunities there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to ensure that the management is able to address questions from all participants, request you to please limit your questions to 2 per participant. If you have a follow-up question, you may rejoin the queue. The next question is from the line of Tushar Manudhane from Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Please go ahead.
Yeah, congrats for the good set of numbers. Just taking forward from the previous participant, so maybe 2 years down the line, we would be talking more about non-ARVs and Laurus Bio. Will we be talking about ANDAs as well?
Yes, absolutely. We will be talking about ANDAs in diabetes, ANDAs in cardiovascular and P4 launches, and maybe new dosage forms. Not only, currently we are doing only solid orals. Maybe situation will change, we may enter into other delivery forms as well. So the lot of things are at the drawing board stage, and we are very comfortable to de-risk our dependence on ARVs while without compromising our growth in ARVs. If you look at 80% ARV APIs company to 38% ARV companies, but our ARV API sales went up by 500 crores from when we were 80% dependent to when we were 38% dependent. So you could understand how much of diversification is happening in the organization.
Sure, sir. Just on this Laurus Bio side, with this acquisition of additional line, how much do we plan to invest over next few years in this venture?
It's not that significant investment. We do believe our subsidiary, Laurus Bio, will be able to generate its own cash to invest or raise its own debt to invest. So, because their margins are very attractive, sustainable, so we don't see any challenges to invest there. We do believe they are capable of raising money, and if necessary, we can assist them.
And just secondly, on the API side, so particularly on the API side, what is the capacity utilization? And given that is it that this brownfield expansion is getting a bit delayed because of COVID, that will be operational from August 21?
Only formulation expansion was delayed by a month during the crisis, but our API expansions are on track. Earlier, we used to say we are one of the top 5 API company with respect to reactor volume. Now we can say we are the top 4. We are number 4 with respect to reactor volume. Currently, we have 4.5 million liters reactor volume, and we are adding close to 1 million liters in the next expansion phase. So that will take us to 5.5 million liters reactor volume. So that's a significant addition. Almost 20% what we have, we're adding in the next 12 months.
Interesting. And so, just lastly on so overall capex guidance, reiterating the capex guidance for next 2 years. As we mentioned in the last quarter conference call, we envisage about 1,200 crore investment over the next 24 months. We believe that is enough for our growth.
Yeah, we don't see any additional capex required to meet our growth.
Thanks a lot, sir. And congrats again.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Krish Mehta from Enam Holdings. Please go ahead.
Yeah, congratulations on the good numbers and thanks for taking my question. I wanted to ask, what is the percentage of revenue this quarter which is non-ARV?
We are talking about all divisions put together.
Yeah, all put together.
Non-ARV, all divisions put together. It's about 40, little over 40%. Yeah.
Okay, 40%. And
maybe closer to 45%, I would say.
45, okay.
Yeah.
And another question I wanted to ask is about capital allocation going forward after the Richcore acquisition. So if we could get a sense of the split between, how much capex you might be thinking of allocating between Richcore versus like a core ARV business.
In the capital allocation, what number we just gave, 1,200 crores, is not inclusive of capex envisaged to Laurus Bio. I think that is not going to be very significant, and they will be able to raise or invest from their own cash. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Samir Shah from ValueQuest. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sir. Congrats for the good set of numbers. Sir, first question is on, in the opening remarks, you said that significant upside is expected from some EU partnership from FY23. If you can just, elaborate on that.
We have done validations for 2 products in the diabetic space, and we expect significant volume uptake in FY23, and also as we wanted to expand and diversify into non-ARV, that is the year where we expect significant diversification happens out of non-ARV.
Right, understood. And so secondly, on the custom synthesis business, if you can give some idea of the funnel, or, in the last con call you mentioned that that business will be on its own, from next year onwards. So are there any significant orders under discussion, or, if you can give some idea of the funnel?
We have a lot of opportunities there. As we are not giving any guidance, we do expect to create dedicated R&D, as I mentioned. We are creating dedicated sites for the division. They will grow from FY23 onwards significantly, and we are very excited about that growth in the division.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I'll get back in that.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Jeevan Patwa from Candy Floss Advisors. Please go ahead.
Congratulations, sir. I have 2 questions. One is about our escape opportunity. If you can explain which therapeutic area those opportunities are and what are the timelines for those launches.
In which division you are asking that question?
The first to file opportunity is the formulation, the paraffin.
First to file, okay. Yeah. Out of 7 first to file, we have the earliest opportunities will be in 2025.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Tushar Bohra from MK Ventures. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, and congratulations to the management for delivering a very strong set of numbers again. So just quickly to start with, taking forward from Jeevan's question and linking back to your earlier answers, we mentioned that 2025 is when we see the first of FTS. and 2023 we expect significant diversification in the business on the non-ARV side, as well as presumably a lot of this diversification will be from regulated markets. So should we look at this as that we have a very clear growth visibility for the next 2-3 years on even before the FTAs start kicking in?
Yes. See, the non-ARV growth coming from first-time generic launches, which are not P4 related, and also launching very large volume, fully integrated formulations, which some of them are filed, some of them are under development. Our growth in formulation division is not dependent on launching our first to file products.
Got it, sir. And we had plans for injectables, I believe it was highlighted in one of the earlier con calls. Any updates on that front?
We'll update you probably in the next couple of quarters, as and when we have concrete timelines and ideas.
Right. Sir, on the capacity expansion side, so we did almost 1,300 crore revenue this quarter, and is it fair to assume that this can be annualized? The current capacity is able to support this on an annualized basis, and so the 1,200 crore expansion that you're saying, none of it is in the numbers right now. So that is a further growth possibility for us.
If you are only satisfied with annualizing 1,300 crores into 4 for next year, please go ahead. So you are not that aggressive then.
No, sir. I am not trying to reveal my hand here. I am just trying to understand that first, it is fair to assume that this 1,300 into 4 is the bare minimum, right? And then I would like to understand, how much of the capex is already done, and exactly from this point forward, how much capex still needs to be done, which will start, which will fuel the growth for next 2 years. And if you can help segregate that by division.
We don't want to reveal division-wise capex, but we can tell you, beginning this quarter, every quarter we have capacity additions, either in the form of backward integration of intermediates, additional API capacities for existing products, additional API capacity for new products, formulation debottlenecking, or lines coming commercialization for formulation. So coming at a regular pace. So these are not coming in bunch. Yeah, every quarter we have something coming handy for our growth.
But then, so in Q2 we mentioned that we will have capacity constraints that will obviously affect some of the profitability in Q3, and Q4 we should see the full effect of new capacity coming in. Now that we've said that there is a slight delay on the formulation side, we should expect that maybe Q1 will probably see the ramp up far better than Q4.
So we do expect Q4 also will be good. So.
Okay. And sir, one last one, if I may quickly squeeze in. If you can help understand the long-term vision for your nutraceuticals, cosmeceuticals business, is there a potential to scale that part of the business into a much larger, more meaningful segment for us?
See, our nutraceutical, cosmeceutical business were added into our CDMO business because we are not in doing commodity products. We are doing one product to one customer kind of business. So we are doing a lot of business with very big companies. We don't want to name those because of confidentiality. We are working with who's and who's in nutraceuticals and cosmeceuticals. Yeah.
And sir, just a clarification on the number you mentioned. So this 1,200 crore capex does not include the Richcore acquisition and possibly anything on the sterile side. It's a fair assumption to make?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, sir. I'll join back in the queue.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dhairya Trivedi from Ambit Capital. Please go ahead. The line of Mr. Dhairya Trivedi got disconnected. We will move to the next question, which is from the line of Sangeeta Purushottam from Cognito. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Andre, Sangeeta's partner. Congratulations for a great set of numbers, sir. I just had one or two quick questions. One is that as far as the EBITDA margins are concerned, is it possible for us to expect these to increase with time with the effect of operating leverage? And my second question was that in the FDF business, there is a marginal Q-on-Q decline. Should we read anything into this, or is this just a minor variation?
I think the slight decline in FDF revenues from Q2 to Q3 is only order execution and nothing significant there. And when it comes to EBITDA margins, as we mentioned, we can't give you a specific number, but we are keep on mentioning we are confident to maintain 30% and or more EBITDA despite of our continued growth in our top line.
Okay.
Sir, this is Sangeeta Purushottam. I had a follow-up question that when we are looking at the composition of the business, in FDF, it's been sort of flattish, like you mentioned, same in synthesis. And a bulk of our growth has really come from the antiviral API. Even within the generic API division, we've seen onco fall and other APIs stabilize. Now, what is outlook on onco, other API and synthesis and generics? These are the divisions which are really going to lead to a mix for you going forward.
The onco APIs will have revenues around 300 because we are not adding the oncology sales related to our CDMO into this. So that segment, high potent manufacturing in CDMO is growing. We are not adding that revenue into this. This is the generic oncology APIs.
Right.
And in other APIs, because significant revenue in other APIs is coming from contract manufacturing, so the sales will be bulky. So we might have seen in Q1 we have done 135 crores. In Q3 we have done 100 crores. But in Q4 the sales will be bigger than Q3. So it's a timing of deliveries in other APIs. The products what we are validating in other APIs will see commercial sale in FY22, and there are good number of APIs see commercial supplies in FY23. The growth in other APIs is also at very good, attractive rate right now.
Right. Okay. And in the generic and synthesis, you don't see any concerns in terms of growth. This is something where we expect numbers start picking up forward.
In synthesis, yes. Synthesis, because of some delivery commitments to be done in Q4. Q4 was bulky last year, and we do expect Q4 will be bulky this year as well in our synthesis division. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you look at our last 3 quarters, we have done 100 crores in Q1, 116 in Q2, 127 in Q3. So it is growing. Yeah. And we are very happy with that growth.
Okay. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Purushottam. May I request you to please rejoin the queue? We have participants waiting for their turn.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Deepan Mehta from Elixir Equities. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Can you hear me? Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So congratulations on a very good set of numbers. Can you give us an overview on the pricing scenario for tenders as well as the open market sales? Are you witnessing any pricing pressure from year-on-year ago quarter to now, and even quarter-on-quarter? Thank you.
I think we indirectly answered this question as we mentioned. Despite of our growth in top line, we were able to maintain the EBITDA margins. That clearly gives an indication that quality of business is very good, and we are not compromising profitability for just top-line growth. So we are comfortable right now, and we expect we'll be able to manage the slight decline in prices by effective cost control measures by the way of procurement or operations improvement. We do expect the numbers will be good.
Yes, sir, I understand, but the margin can be maintained also because of change of product mix. So my specific question is that for the same product, quarter on year, can you give us some idea as to what the price declines have been? Are they in the range of 3 to 5%? Are they in the range of 8 to 10%? Something to give us an idea that what is the kind of pricing impact which may be there on the top line, which has of course been covered by better cost management and improving on the product mix.
We can't give you those product-specific details.
No, so I'm not asking for product-specific. My question is that around for the same type of products, molecules, on an average basis, what would be the price decline? I mean, you're not asking product-wise. Overall for the company, on an aggregate basis, something to give us an idea as to what we are dealing with in terms of price erosions.
See, our sales in US and Europe in formulations is a quarter of our formulation sales, and we are not seeing any price decline significantly there. And when it comes to the LMS ARV segment, because of these tenders are not weekly tender or monthly tender, pricing are reasonably stable over a period of a few quarters. So there is no pricing is decline for every tender. So I hope I answered your question.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much and all the best, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ranvir Singh from Sunidhi Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. Sir, can you give a breakup of finished doses between ARV and non-ARV?
As I mentioned, it is 75 and 25.
No, this is for advanced countries and LMIC.
So our LMIC sales are predominantly ARVs, and then Europe and North America are non-ARVs.
Okay, but TLE 600 we had rollout in US as well, right?
So that's not very significant sales. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think previous participant has already asked this, but just in general, because the selling price of TLD $75 and people were selling it at a discount, so this discount has increasingly been higher. People are the tender price is much lower than what the selling price is versus last year, or how is the trend there? In general for industry, for all players, I wanted to understand.
See, you have to look at how much of backward integration people are doing. If somebody buys APIs and participates in tenders, somebody buys intermediates and make APIs and participate in tenders. Somebody makes starting materials and make intermediates and APIs and participate in tender. So the profitability margins depends on where they start. So for integrated players like us, we have biggest advantage of maintaining profitability versus people who are non-integrated, buy API and do formulation. Some people even don't do formulation. Some people outsource formulation manufacturing by buying APIs and giving it to somebody else for formulations. For those companies, the profits will be even less. So you have to look at how integrated the offering in ARV is more important to maintain profitability, just not the top line.
Okay. Okay, fine. And just clarity, that Richcore revenue is built in this quarter, any amount, or it's not at all?
No revenue or profitability included in Q3. Probably we'll do it from Q4 onwards.
Okay. Okay. That's my side. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of P. Srihari from PCS Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and congrats on the set of numbers. Talking on the ARV front, since I indicated that the This is the new quarterly run rate. Can you share some outlook for FY22 growth? And secondly, there has been recently there is a 1 month injectable has been approved by the US FDA. I would like to know what is the kind of impact that could have on the ARV portfolio. And on the FDA front, it could give some kind of a growth outlook. That will be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I'll answer your long-acting injectables business. So we are in ARV business since last 2 decades, and we are watching the developments very carefully. And if there is a disruption, we want to be part of the disruption rather than follow it. As you could see, the transition from efavirenz to dolutegravir, we took benefit out of that disruption. And even if tenofovir will move to another low dose tenofovir alafenamide, we have approvals in place, and we have another combination products under development, which we are filing probably next week. And if there is a long-acting injectable will enter market, when and how will be depending on the WHO guidelines, which are not yet released. And even if it is as part of the treatment guidelines, it will be not before 2025. And we have the APIs developed already, and depending on the guidelines, we will develop formulations. And if there is a disruption because of this, I'm sure we'll be part of that. So you can be rest assured on that.
Okay. Guidance for FY22?
Your first question was not very audible, so can you repeat?
Yeah, you mentioned that the quarterly run rate is sustainable. So what is the kind of growth guidance you will give for FY22 for the ARV business?
We are not giving specific growth, but we are comfortable to say we will continue to grow in API business, not only FY21 but also in FY22.
Okay, on the FDF front, would it be possible to give the volume share? I mean, you said 25% of the revenue comes from the developed markets. So what would be the share in volume terms?
Volume term, I can't give you those details. Yeah.
Okay. How do you see this 25% moving?
Please write to us, and we are happy to share you the details. Yeah.
Yeah, and the 25%, how do you see it moving over the long term, next 2 to 3 years?
We will increase that share of revenue coming from Europe and North America than what we have today significantly because of products launch planned which are non-ARV. So that revenue share will go up.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this will be the last question, which is from the line of Charulata Gaidhani from Dalal & Broacha. Please go ahead.
Yeah, congrats on the good set of numbers. If you could give by product the traction in ARV API.
Give you the majority growth in ARV sales APIs came from our 3 core products, tenofovir, lamivudine, efavirenz, and dolutegravir. All 3 products, the sales were increased significantly. Yeah, all 4. Yeah.
Okay. And second question pertains to the Europe partnership. Have you filed for marketing authorization?
It's a very interesting question. Our partner had marketing authorizations. We are becoming their contract manufacturer as an additional site. So the approvals will be much easier. So our growth in those products in FY23 has nothing to do with approvals. So our facility was approved by European authorities and products are approved by authorities, and we are becoming a contract manufacturer to them where we make API and also formulations for them.
Okay. So, can you name the partner?
No.
Okay. Fine. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, due to time constraints, that was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference over to Dr. Satya for closing comments.
Thank you everyone for your very valuable questions, and we always learn a lot from very interesting questions from the community. Thank you and take care.